Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar today. Today's session is called EB2 NIW for pilots, yes or no? Let the debate begin. We're going to wait for a few minutes to wait for people to join. I'm really happy because we have almost 400 people registered for today. So we expect around 200 or a little bit more to be here. We already have 140 people connected. So we're really happy about that. Great topic today. So today's session is called EB2 NIW for pilots. Yes or no? Let the debate begin. We also have one CLE credit from the Florida Bar Association. And if you belong to another bar association, you can reach out to us at our email, sales@joorney.com, and we'll provide the documents that you need. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Marianela Mansour. I'm partner and global director of sales and marketing here at Joorney Business Plans, and I'll be your host today. Let's give people another minute or so. You can let us know where people are joining us from, what states, what cities. We have immigration lawyers today here, and also a few applicants that are interested in the topic. We have a lot to cover today. Let's see how many people we already have. Okay, 150. Okay, let's get started. So, as most of you already know, Joorney prepares business plans for immigration purposes. And we're doing many EB2 NIWs these days, actually more than 300 per month, to be precise. And since the webinar today is about pilots, I've spoken to the team and gathered that we've done more than 220 projects related to this field in the past years. A few of our partners' lawyers specialize in the field of aviation immigration, and today we're having a conversation with one of them. I will be introducing him a little bit shortly, and you'll have the opportunity to ask him questions at the end. As I was mentioning, I'm really happy about the number of registrants for today. We have almost 400. And we usually gather questions on the registration stage. Usually we get around 10 to 15 questions. Well, today we had almost 40. So I'm really happy about that. This is going to be a good one. We will be talking about the EB2 NIW program itself, the eligibility of pilots for the program, the current situation and news about the industry as a whole, and a big discussion as to whether the shortage of pilots is enough or not, the experience of pilots who have applied for this visa, and much more. We are very fortunate to have a wonderful expert guest with us today. His name is William Dale Wages. He has over 36 years of legal experience in various immigration matters, and he is also a retired airline pilot himself and flight instructor. Dale leverages his extensive aviation background to assist fellow aviators in achieving their dream of working in the U.S. He combines his legal expertise with his aviation knowledge to provide comprehensive services to his clients. His mission is to help them navigate the complex and dynamic immigration system with confidence and ease. We've worked with Dale on multiple professional and business plans for pilots in the past few years, so we're really happy to have him here with us. Welcome, Dale.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting the invitation, Dale. So we're going to get started. I just wanted to tell everybody that I'll be mentioning the CLE code at the end. So as I mentioned before, it's one CLE credit from the Florida Bar Association. But if you belong to another bar association, you can reach out to us by email, sales@joorney.com, and we'll send you the proper documentation. For those who want to add questions for the Q&A at the end, please go to your right-hand bottom side and you can ask the questions there on the tab. Okay, let's get started. Great. Dale, so I usually like to start with the basics. Let's lay out the basics for the EB2 NIW.
Well, basically, the EB2 NIW is requesting that the USCIS waive the job offer requirement to immigrate to the United States. What the petitioner is basically saying is, I don't need a job offer per se because I am so exceptional that it would benefit the United States to let me into the United States to work and to proceed with my endeavor in the country. And those processes have been laid out in a case called Matter of Dinosaur that was decided in 2016, which broadened the field of those eligible to apply under the EB2 visa. Prior to that, most of the people who were applying under the EB2 were scientists, researchers, medical doctors. But after the 2016 decision, several lawyers, not myself, I wish I had been this smart, saw the opportunity and broadened the field and started offering this visa to pilots because they met the criteria in lots of ways, based upon at the time what many perceived to be a gigantic need in the country for pilots.
Mhm. And Dale, as I was mentioning before, there are so many lawyers that are interested in this topic. Why are pilots a particular field that is such a debatable topic?
Well, I just think I answered that question briefly because before the 2016 decision, this was this visa was basically reserved for the elite of the elite in the research in the academic field, people whose endeavor would come into the United States and do research projects and scientific discoveries. That still happens right now, but now that the pilots have been able to come in, a lot of people resent the fact that these guys who do not have the high academic standards that these professors have are being able to get the visa. I don't mean to sound disingenuous to other people, but I've read what other lawyers have written about this project, and they don't think it's a proper avenue for people to come into the country. I strongly disagree with them, and the clients that I've gotten in absolutely disagree with them as well.
Hmm. Hmm. Very interesting, Dale. And let's talk a little bit about the requirements of the EB2 NIW itself, pertaining to pilots. Are pilots considered exceptional, and why?
I'm sorry, you were disconnected for a moment. Could you repeat the question, please?
I was saying that in line with the EB2 NIW requirements, why are pilots considered to be exceptional?
If they meet the criteria based upon the Donisar decision, then they are exceptional. I can briefly go over them with you. A person can be considered exceptional if they can demonstrate, basically, I'm reading this the law with you, that their endeavor has substantial merit or is of national importance, that they're well positioned to advance the endeavor, and that they will benefit the United States by waiving the job offer. A person, once they're deemed to be exceptional, and I'll go through that criteria in just a moment, that's still not enough just to get into the country. People think, oh, look, I have 10 years of experience and I have a license to fly jets and I make a good salary. I'm automatically eligible. That's not the case. Let me reiterate this to you. One of the requirements is that you have to show an academic record with a degree or diploma or certification in the area which you're going to be proceeding with the endeavor in the country. If you don't have that, you have to have at least 10 years of experience in your chosen field that you wish to pursue in the United States. Then you have to have a license to practice that profession or a certification. And the evidence that you've commanded a salary in the field you're in, or other remuneration for your services. One of the other requirements is a membership in a professional association, and the documents would prove recognition for achievements and significant contributions. If you meet 3 of those 6 criteria, you are considered exceptional. Those are really easy to get to gather for pilots if they don't have an academic record. They don't have any degree, and a lot of pilots around the world do not. The United States was one of the rare countries that required our pilots to have a 4-year degree. And the basis for that went back to the military, because most of the pilots who flew professionally in the United States were military pilots, and all of them had to have a 4-year degree. After World War II, it was a requirement to operate in the military to become an officer. We did not have warrant officers per se. I mean, some do, but most of the time they were commissioned officers, which required a 4-year degree. So that spread into the airlines, and the requirement was have a 4-year degree. Europe, South America, Asia, they didn't require that to that level. So we're one of the rare countries that had that criteria. So it was very easy for pilots to qualify to go to the airlines if they came through the military academies and flew for the military for a while. It was just like a pass-through. But suddenly, with the pilot shortage out there, you have kids who are out there who are flying for commuter airlines who don't have four-year degrees. And the airlines in the last 2 years have waived that requirement of a four-year degree because of the pilot shortage in the United States. That assisted pilots in this country, foreign pilots, from being able to be eligible to apply for the carriers in the United States because they do not have four-year degrees. A lot of them went from high school right into pilot school and then into pilot training and then into the airlines. And they're very successful men and women, highly intelligent, highly motivated, but they could not meet the requirements here to apply for an airline if they didn't have a four-year degree. When that was waived, that opened up the avenues for more pilots of foreign birth to be able to apply for the EB-2 visa because they would be able to meet that criteria to get a job here in the United States. It's a long answer to a short question, and I apologize for taking so long.
Oh no, Dale, that's why we're here. And because you have a lot of experience in this matter, I mean, the more you share, the better. We're here for that. So
Well,
Dale, you were an airline transport pilot and flight instructor yourself. So and aside from also being an immigration lawyer in this field, you're very up to date with what's happening in the industry. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what the future is looking like?
well, if you want to speak about the shortage, I could discuss that, right? I could tell you that. But right now, the industry's in a little bit of a flux. We have some problems with Boeing, and we have some problems with the engines on the A320neo. Those are causing delays in those aircraft coming to market. I just saw an interview on CNBC this morning with the CEO of Southwest Airlines. He was discussing the fact that they have ordered 80 737 MAX jets from Boeing, and they've only had 20 delivered, which is causing them to have to restructure their route structure, possibly not pull out of cities, he said, but reduce services to cities. Other airlines are experiencing delays to the point where they have actually stopped hiring. United has put a hiring freeze May and June, and they said that they might start in July, but that hasn't been decided yet. Boeing is working very hard to get their quality control under control, and the FAA has recently put a watch on them. Basically, they've said that they're going to have a higher presence in the operations. They're going to be looking at their manuals. They're going to be looking at their training. They're going to be looking at every aspect of the airline's operations. Well, that, of course, has put a damper on them as well. Another issue you have is with the grounding of these 320s, airlines are not able to continue with their plans and their expansion plans. So that's putting a little bit of a damper on the hiring, but it's a temporary lull. We still have a pilot shortage per se. We still have a large number of pilots who are over the age of 45 who are going to be retiring within the next 20 years. I've heard statistics up to 55 to 60%. I've seen other studies that show a little bit less. It depends on how you look at the numbers, but that also does not entail the medical disabilities that occur to people as they age, and also people who want early retirement. We have about 14 to 15 pilots a day turning 65 in the country. If you take that times 365, you can see the vast number of pilots that are leaving the industry because of the age 65 rule. Plus, you have people leaving for medical reasons as well. So we are experiencing a large gap, not with the pilots we have right now, but with the pilots in the pipeline. That is the problem we have in the United States, is we do not have a sufficient number of pilots in the pipeline. And that is exasperated by a rule that was passed by Congress many years ago. Well, actually, not many years ago, several years ago, after the crash in Buffalo, where the pilots, both of them, were a little bit less than experienced, and they were tired, and they resulted in a crash, and a lot of people were killed. It was a very tragic accident. The families pressured the FAA and the Congress, and they passed a rule saying that no one can fly for a 121 carrier unless they have 1,500 hours of flight time. Well, that hurt a lot of guys who used the commuters as a way to get into the airline industry. Now to even be eligible to fly for a commuter, you have to have 1,500 hours. It's hard to get 1,500 hours if you don't have any money to pay for it. The military used to be our big pipeline, but the military is having a pilot shortage as well. Um, Secretary of Defense Mad Dog, I forget his last name right now. Forget his he That's what Trump used to call him, Mad Dog. He was Mathis, excuse me. He asked for a report from Congress, and it showed that we have a pilot shortage in the Air Force, and in the Marines, and in the Navy. So that pipeline is shut down. So that's the flux of the industry right now. We have a pilot shortage that's going to continue, but we also have a temporary slowdown because of the problems with Boeing and with the Airbus engines.
And Dale, I remember when we were preparing for the webinar and we were discussing the different questions, you mentioned something about the importance of having experienced pilots be present also while the young ones are coming into the field. Has the age concept been changing in that regard?
Well, it used to be years ago with the legacy carriers, Pan Am, Eastern, United, TWA, you had a bunch of pilots who came through the Korean War and World War II and the Vietnam War. And we didn't have the expansion that we have today. So pilots would wait 15 to 20 years to move from the right seat to the left seat of an airliner. And they gathered lots of experience. And as those pilots aged and retired, which it used to be age 60, by the way, until they changed it to 65, then they moved into the left seat. And pilots would come from the flight engineer's seat to the right seat. And it was a pass through, and people gathered great experience. Nowadays, with the advent of the two pilot airplane and the advent of the expansion, we have a less experienced group of pilots flying the airliners today. I'm not saying they're not competent at all. Believe me, that is not what I'm saying. But the wait for 20 years to get from the right seat to the left seat is gone. Most recently, pilots have been upgrading in 18 months, 20 months in some carriers. Is it unsafe? No, but it does beg the difference. If you could have a gentleman or a lady who applies for the EB2 visa with 18,000 hours, is it not beneficial for that person to sit in that cockpit with a young and experienced captain? I think safety is a vital issue. Give you an example really
Yeah.
quick. The accident in the Hudson, the incident where Captain Sullenberger successfully brought that 320 in with no engines and safely landed it in the Hudson. Both he and his first officer had over 20,000 hours of flight time. They were calm. They ran their checklist. They had situational awareness, and they put the airplane where it needed to be. They couldn't have made LaGuardia. They couldn't have made Teterboro. They couldn't have made any other airport. He saw the situation. He reacted, and that's based on experience. And that's one of the reasons we push so hard with our EB2 visas, is to have experienced people coming into the country to assist in the aviation industry per se.
Thank you, Dale. And I remember one of the questions that we had at the registration stage was how many hours do you require to take on a case for a pilot? Do you have a minimum?
I won't take a pilot who has under 8,000 hours. And the
8,000.
reason 8,000, and the reason I say that is I look at the average flight time per year for a pilot. If you fly international, you can fly up to 1,000 hours per year. In some jurisdictions, 1,200 hours a year. That takes a toll on the guy. So the average pilot flies about 800 to 900 hours a year. So I think 8,000 hours is a good cutoff. It shows that they have at least 10 years of experience, but it also gives them a great basis on which to have seen a lot of the world, a lot of different airports, a lot of different weather patterns, a lot of different situations. And I think that's just my personal, there is no requirement. That's just my personal cutoff, 8,000 hours.
Okay. Thank you, Dale. So let's talk about the petitions themselves. How do you usually consider a pilot for an EB2 NIW petition? I mean, aside from from the hours, and also to discuss the big question here: is shortage enough of a reason why a pilot can be considered for the EB2 NIW?
The shortage has never been the reason. It's always been an underlying factor, but it's never been the reason because the law doesn't require that. They have to meet the criteria. They have to have the 10 years of experience. They have to have a license to practice their profession. They have to have the salary. That aside, then their endeavor has to be in the national interest of the United States. They have to be, it has to be they have to be well positioned to pursue that. So, in other words, if they're just a line pilot flying between A and B, and they haven't done anything exceptional in the field, it's a very difficult journey to be able to get your EB2. What you need to show is, and what I like to see is I like to see people who have, and this is the best client in the world, a master's degree in aviation related studies, a manager, a check airman. A check airman is a pilot who is in a position to evaluate other pilots, either in the simulator or in line flying. Then you have a type rating examiner who's a pilot who not only trains and teaches, he checks and certifies pilots. Those people have reached a level of expertise in their field where they're affecting aviation positively every day. The pilots they've trained, the pilots they've mentored, the pilots they've checked and trained, those people go on to train and check other people as well over the course of their careers. So they build on that base that this experienced pilot gathers to them. So yes, I would love to have a client like that. They're not always there. I've turned clients down, and I've also had clients, I say, listen, you need to do something to improve yourself. You're not there yet. One of the things I suggest is go write articles. You have a degree, go write articles about in your field. Get published. Try to make changes. Do studies. I have a friend of mine. He's not a client, but he's from Colombia, and he happens to be a mathematician, but he's also a pilot. He's a brilliant man, and he did fuel studies. And if he were to ever to apply for the visa, he would get into the country immediately because his savings. He did cost studies and showed airlines how they could save fuel. That is a great advantage, but not every pilot can do that. So, if a pilot is flying a complex airplane, I like that. If a pilot has certifications from different jurisdictions, a lot of pilots fly around the world. Pilots from South America go to Asia, they go to the Middle East, they fly for Emirates, Qatar Airways, Etihad, but they also have a certification from their country of birth where they got their license. They've gone to Qatar, they've gone to Emirates, they've gotten another certification. That shows that their ability to pass regulatory requirements in different countries and different jurisdictions, pass written exams, be able to learn new airplanes, new type ratings, all of these things, so a person has reached a level in their field where they would be above the average pilot flying between point A and point B. So I like to have the international pilots. I like to have check airmen. I like to have instructor pilots, high time pilots. Not to say that I've not been successful with pilots who were first officers flying the 380. That's a highly complex airplane. I was able to get them through by proving that their exceptional abilities based and also their proposed endeavor in the United States would benefit the United States. So you asked me a question, and again, I gave you a very long answer. I will
No,
stop
no, I
this.
like that. I'm looking for those, Dale.
I don't want to filibuster. I apologize.
No, no, it's okay. And we were also discussing actually about the shortage this morning. Speaking with our team internally, a lot of our partners that mention the shortage issue, they always mention that it's an issue about the industry, but not about the individual. So there needs to be that part of the case as well, right? Shortage can be one thing that can be mentioned about the industry among many others, but it has to do with the person.
Right, exactly. The law requires you under the under the best interest of the United States? Are you going to create jobs? Are you going to help an economically depressed area? Are you going to help societal welfare? Well, I can explain to you how you can do that as a pilot. You'll say, well, how's that possible? Well, you have communities that are losing service in the United States right now. The Regional Airline Association, which represents the regional pilots in the country, did a study that's fascinating, talking about the economic benefits of commuter airlines flying to outlying communities, but also the devastating impact in those communities when the airlines pull out. And right now, 60% of the pilots going to the majors right now, our legacy carriers, are coming from the regionals. The regionals are having to replace these pilots, and it's very difficult because the shortage exists in the pipeline and in the training facilities. People did not want to spend the $100,000 it would require them to get their pilot's license and get that time, or work as a flight instructor, building time, or go flying banners. It was other ways to make money in this economy. So our starts, as I call them starts, are private pilots becoming commercial pilots, becoming instrument rated, becoming multi-engine pilots, then becoming ATPs at 1,500 hours. Those dried up. It's increased recently with the latest salaries that are coming through, but we still have to build those people up with 1,500 hours of time. So basically, the pilot shortage itself is the underlying reason because of the economic loss to the communities, because they have to pull out and they can't service those communities. United Airlines and American are actually chartering buses to bring passengers from outlying airports they used to serve and bringing them into the major hubs, Newark and other areas in the Northeast. So yes, it is an underlying issue, but the pilot's endeavor still has to show how he can accomplish those things on the other side, which is why the business plan that you offer is so important, because it shows the USCIS what is this person going to do to basically improve the United States when they come here. What is their plan? What is their journey, to use your company's name? What's their journey going to be? What are they going to be able to accomplish? So if you take the instructor pilot, the line pilot, the pilot who flew the complex airplanes, well, they can do more than just go work for American Airlines, which in and of itself is not going to change much. They can mentor, they can train, they can consult, they can do so many different things. And that's where that experience can benefit the country.
Exactly. Thank you, Dale. Yes, so there's a lot about like all those activities and endeavors that makes it highlight the safety aspect of things as well very strongly, right?
Absolutely.
Um, I- I'm checking a few. I have a list of different business models of the 220 approximate projects that we've done, and I see consulting, I see education services, pilot training, pilot and flight simulators, aeronautical security, physical security, maintenance training, helicopter pilots used on oil and gas or rescue operations, pilots who, yeah, consultancy, pilot training, a lot of the same things that would impact aviation safety, right? So we can
Absolutely.
definitely see the variety of endeavors. Um, I want to ask you a little bit of a more specific questions about the prongs. How can we address those, or how can other immigration lawyers know a little bit about how you usually address those prongs for pilots?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yes, like discussing strategies for the prongs for national importance waiver, and for the national importance and for the waiver.
Okay. One of the things I look at when I can you see me? I think I've lost my screen here.
I can see you there.
Okay. One of the things I look at is, as I stated earlier, is the pilot's experience and what he's achieved in his career. In the United States, an ATP can train another ATP, an airline transport pilot. So one of the things I require my clients to do is I want them to take the ATP written prior to coming to the United States or already have an ATP in the United States, because it helps them ease into a job here or a role here where they can train other pilots. Part 61 allows an ATP to train another ATP, so you don't need a flight instructor's rating. So I place a lot of my clients into the training aspects if they've done that before, and that's what I like to see done. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, yes, you did, Dale. You also mentioned something about the waiver itself and how pilot associations, the opinion that they had on the waiver itself. You mentioned ALPA, and this morning we were talking about that. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect?
Sure. If you look at ALPA's position over the last couple of years on the age 65 rule, they have been opposed to it to the point of almost ridiculous, because you can give them all the statistics on other other countries that have allowed pilots to fly to 67, some even 70, and they just ignore it. And they're basically protecting their younger pilots in the association. I disagree with ALPA's position on this strongly. In fact, some of their senior captains who are members of the union filed a lawsuit in the Northern District of Illinois in January of this year regarding the fact that under the last National Labor Board rules that they are not representing them properly. But ALPA has been strongly against the age 65 to 67 rule. They negotiated some of the best contracts I've ever seen with Delta and other carriers, United, American, which is not represented by ALPA, but their union also was able to negotiate some of the highest pay increases in the last several years, 25, 26%, with increments over the next several years. I think that's fantastic. I want to see everyone make money. I think it's fantastic. But at the same time, they're never going to allow an airline to seek labor certification. If that's the case, then the labor certification for a pilot is just out of the question, which is what we tell the USCIS in our petitions. They're even opposed to the E3 visa for Australian pilots. They did not want their carriers hiring E3 pilots. There's nothing they can do about it because the agreement between Australia and the United States allows those people to be hired. The EB2 is a little bit different because of the labor certification. So ALPA will never, ever allow a major carrier like United, Delta, to go out and seek labor certification.
Thank you, Dale. Have you seen that there has been recently more of a focus on the economic argument than before?
That's an interesting question, because again, that your question basically assumes that the economic argument was never part of it. But what I think you really want to say is, are you using the economic argument in lieu of the pilot shortage? No, they're joined and they mix. The pilot shortage causes the economic losses. Bringing in these pilots helps the aviation industry. There's a case out there, the name escapes me right now. Some of the other attorneys who are online probably have it at their fingertips, that the USCI always cites to us and says, there's a single school teacher working in a single schoolhouse in a single city. How's that going to affect the teacher shortage in the country? So a teacher shortage in and of itself is not enough. But USCIS doesn't realize that teacher only affects those students in that classroom. A pilot coming into the country affects so many other things, because it allows airlines to take some of their planes that are grounded right now. American Airlines has 77 airplanes grounded, United 103, Delta 15 to 20 airplanes grounded in the desert, not enough pilots to fly them. With the slowdown of the hiring right now, I think it was 2,200 pilots were hired at one carrier last year, which is astronomical. I think Delta said they're going to go down to 1,200 pilots this next year. United's going to be 1,000. American hasn't mentioned any numbers, but they put off hiring until September of this year. Mm-hmm. That is going to allow these commuters, of course, to keep their pilots. ALPA just mentioned issued a letter in the last couple of days saying that there were no pass-throughs from the regionals to the major carriers this year. Pass-throughs is where a pilot who works for the United commuter under a contract can pass through to the main line and maintain a seniority number. That didn't happen, and that they said they don't anticipate it happening in the next couple of months. With those pilots remaining with the regionals, some of these airplanes can be probably taken out of storage, put back online in the meantime. But it's not going to bring us 77 airplanes out of storage. It's not going to bring 103 with United. It's going to give a temporary basis for it. But no, we need the pilots here in the United States. And the economic argument that I just mentioned again goes back to the loss of service that these communities are having, the airplanes that are grounded, that the airlines are still paying lease payments on. It's all interconnected.
Exactly. Thank you, Dale. And I mean, the pilot topic in itself is there is a lot of debate around it. Does this become extremely subjective of the officers when they're taking a file to be reviewed?
Absolutely, it does. We can tell by the way some agents answer and they issue an RFE, whether or not we don't know the person's name, but we know it's the same agent because they have the same critical attitude towards aviation. And some agents out there just are diametrically opposed to pilots. They just refuse to say it's in the national interest, no matter what you say to them. Whereas other clients of mine have been gone through and in 6 months without even an RFE, they're approved. There's certain agents who just do not accept aviation as a something that's in the national interest of the United States.
And that being said, Dale, do you, when you see that, do you often reply to the RFEs, or do you decide to refile to get another officer perhaps on the case?
I sent an email out today to a co-counsel on a case saying that the RFE was so bad we might want to withdraw it. So yes, we will. But in all cases, regardless if the client is turned down, we always refile for them a second time. We don't charge them any legal fees. We will charge them for our paralegals' time because we haven't raised our fees in the last couple of years, and inflation is eating into that number. But we just made a corporate decision. We keep the fees the same because this is an expensive proposition without any guaranteed results. So we try to be as fair as we can to these people. Most of these pilots who are applying are husbands and wives with children in schools, and it's a lot of money to come up with. So we've kept our fees down, but we will, of course, have to. We cannot we cannot absorb the paralegal costs on two cases. So we will ask them to pay the paralegal costs, but we don't charge any legal fees. Of course, we revamp everything we can with new expert opinion letters. We change the letters of intent. We contact people like yourself, get business plans for them. And this business plans have only become important to us in the last year to year and a half, as we've seen an increase in denials across the spectrum. Not necessarily with us, but we talk to other lawyers a lot around the country, and they're seeing an increase in denials. The USCIS is becoming a little bit less generous, I guess the right word is, when it comes to this in certain ways. But we've won a lot of RFEs utilizing your services. And I'm not a salesman for you. I'm just letting you know that you've been successful when we come back with an RFE and we present them to you and you address the RFE, that we've been able to get people through. So I think that the business plan and or the professional plan are vitally important now, and they're going to become part of our arsenal from now on.
Thank you, Dale, for that. We really appreciate it.
No,
And I mean, we learned so much.
I'm not a paid spokesperson.
Yes, this is not paid.
I'm just
For
only reason
sure.
I'm saying it is there's other attorneys listening, and I
Yes.
just find that I think it's vitally important that we present the best case, put the best case forward for our clients.
Definitely, Dale. And actually, we received a question on the registration where some lawyers were interested in knowing whether you use the business plan to file the original case, or if you use it only at the RFE stage.
Now we're going to start filing it at the very beginning. If the person has a ability and the finances to come forward with a personal business plan where they can come in to do training, they can start training outfits. Let me give you an example to answer the question. There, in the corporate world right now, there's so many corporate jets being purchased and utilized right now that the simulator systems are full. You cannot, even if you bring an airplane on, you can't even get simulator time. With that in mind, a lot of my clients are who have training experience were suggesting that they get involved in the training aspect of it. So that's one of the things that we're doing, and we want to bring that in at the very beginning because we think it makes the case stronger.
And Dale, do you use a professional plan or a business plan in every case, or are there some that you don't?
Not in every case, no. If the person is more academic and they have a strong with master's degrees, we had a client who works for EASA in Europe, and he also has 2 master's degrees and everything like that. And I think we can get him through on just his academic criteria. But if a person doesn't have that, then of course a business plan is vital.
Thank you, Dale. And while we're talking about the documents to add to the file, what documents can be considered sufficient evidence of the pilot's exceptional skills, unique contributions, and achievements in the different cases?
Well, you have to start with the basics. You have to prove that they've been employed for 10 years, or if they have to have an academic degree, that we have to get the transcripts from the universities. We have to make sure that it's an accredited university, all of those things. There's services that will do that for you. We have to have copies of all of their certificates and licenses. We have to have copies of their logbooks. I like their training records. I like certifications from the airline on all the courses they've taken, because that's one of the criteria that you have is their education. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And so there's a lot of those things. Plus, then we have letters of recommendation. A letter of recommendation has to address the person as not a great pilot. I've flown with this guy, great demeanor in the cockpit, fly with him anywhere in the world, loved going out to dinner with him. That doesn't cut it. What has to say is that this letter is, what has this person done to promote aviation within the realm of where you know them? What have they done to expand aviation? What have they done to help other pilots? What have they done to help the company? And that's what we look for. And then, of course, we always get an expert opinion letter from an independent expert to make an independent evaluation on the pilot. So basically, certifications, logbooks, proof of education. I always like to put a police clearance in there, though it's not required. Is this person to show that they're a good character? And I always like to get letters from not their present employer. I like letters from their previous employers. Why? Because if they left under a good standing and the director of training is willing to write a letter to the effect of what an exceptional pilot they were, or the director of operations, what this person did while he was there, that's beneficial because it shows that this person didn't leave their employer under a cloud, and now that they're working in Asia or on the Middle East.
Thank you, Dale. What resources do you usually use to back up the petitions? Congressional mandate studies, funding initiatives, and that sort of thing.
Every one of those things. We use congressional studies. One of the things that we put in our petitions in the last couple of years is Lindsey Graham's request that the pilot age be extended to 67 years of age. It passed the House resoundingly. It's going to committee right now with the appropriations bill. So we use the appropriations bill. Congress over the years has put a lot of emphasis on getting younger people interested in aviation. So it shows as one of the criteria is that some area that the government is interested in. And of course that it is, so we use those studies. But we also use statistics on economic analysis. We show studies based upon how much of our GDP is dependent on aviation. We've all seen the problems with the supply chain over the last couple of years. It happened during COVID. You couldn't get supplies here. Well, that was because the supply chain was backed up. The ports were backed up on shipping. So all of these studies show the need for a robust aviation industry in the United States. Our GDP, I think it's 3.5 to 5% of US GDP is based on aviation. And don't forget general aviation. General aviation adds billions of dollars to our local economies each year. For every person employed in general aviation, there's 3.5 other people employed in support roles. It's double and triple that for the commercial carriers. Each flight that takes off, there's literally hundreds of people involved in that airplane leaving that gate, from scheduling, training, HR, dispatch, weather, fuelers, caterers, all of these things that go into one airplane leaving. And think about the amount of money that spreads in the economy. When that airplane sits on the ground and it doesn't move because there's not enough pilots involved to fly that airplane, or it doesn't fly from Atlanta to a small outlying city in Kansas because there's not enough pilots to fly that airplane, that affects people's jobs. And it affects the people in that community. And that's important. And the USCIS has to recognize that because it affects our economy.
Exactly. Dale, and let's talk about approval rates for pilots. Is there any information that you have about those, or maybe your own?
No, I can tell you that we have a high approval rate. We just had a pilot approved last month. We've been very successful, though we have seen an increase in denials. I'm not going to lie to you, and we're revamping and trying to figure out what's the best way to go on that, and we want to overcome that. It's not that it's astronomical, or we wouldn't be in this business because we wouldn't be successful in doing it. It's just like a criminal lawyer. You don't want to hire a criminal lawyer who's never tried a criminal case. So
Exactly.
you want an attorney who's going to learn from his losses, reevaluate, and go forward. But yes, we've had a very good, strong run. And but I do not know the exact statistics on pilots per se. But I think I read an article saying there's about 75% approval rate for EB2s in
Okay.
general. But a lot of those, again, you have to think about are the people who are the academics and the scientists and the researchers and everything else.
Exactly. Thank you, Dale. Before we go to the Q&A, I want to say also that we're going to add Dale's information in the chat, and you can reach out to Dale if you want to refer cases, co-counsel, etc. In that case, I mean, you can reach out to Dale directly. I wanted to ask you, Dale, before we jump to the Q&A, what remarks would you like to share with those lawyers who are usually against doing EB2 NIW for pilots?
I don't see why anybody would be against it since people are being approved. What I would suggest is if you don't have the experience, couple yourself with someone who knows what they're doing. And there are a lot of good firms out there from the East Coast to the West Coast who are very good at this job, who understand it. I think that based on my finger on the pulse of the aviation industry, I watch it closely. I constantly am scouring for news on aviation that will help my clients. I think that that's what the kind of lawyer you need, someone who is going to have his finger on the pulse of the aviation industry and know what's happening in the aviation industry to see how that's going to affect your clients.
Okay. Thank you, Dale. Okay, so to our favorite part, let's go with the Q&A. So we have 10 minutes until 12. At 12, I'll be mentioning the CLE code. But I mean, if we have more questions, which I see we do, We can stay a few minutes after if that's okay with you, Dale.
That's fine.
Let's start with the first question. Does nationality affect the pilot's application? For example, Chinese or Venezuelan, for example.
It does and it doesn't. What you have is it's a two parts to this entire process. It's the getting the visa and then having the visa issued to come to the United States for the green card. If you're from a country with a long waiting list, then it does affect you because the EB2 visa does not put you at the top of the list. I think India has a 10 or 12-year waiting list, other countries as well, China as well. Venezuela does not. I've gotten Iranians through, and in the United States and Iran don't really even have diplomatic relationships. But I've gotten Iranians in, and I've gotten Venezuelans in as well. So no, it's just a matter of the waiting time at the National Visa Center.
Okay. Okay, we have another question from Anna. The PERM process was developed to address shortages in the job market. How can the shortage be used as a national interest argument? Then no one should need to go through PERM.
Well, I think I answered that question earlier in that I don't believe that, we have represented 135 operators who needed pilots, and we've been successful in getting labor certification for them. I don't believe that the unions that are very strong in this country and all of the major carriers here are unionized entities would allow their airlines that they work for to go out and seek labor certification, because that's going to open up the entire world to a litany of pilots. And of course, the process is 2 years long. You have to go to the labor board. You have to show your need. You have to show that you cannot find adequate pilots for this field. And it's a very difficult process, and it takes a long time. The E3 was quite beneficial to the airlines here. There's so many Australians flying in the country right now. And there's also H1 as well.
Okay. Thank you, Dale. We have another question. I have a pilot who fights fire. His work is seasonal. Although he has been a pilot for over 10 years, he did not work full-time, just a few months each year as a contractor. Am I able to prove 10 years of work experience?
It's full-time experience.
It has to be full-time experience. Okay. There's another question from Tasha. Would you also expect 8,000 hours for a helicopter pilot?
8,000 hours is a lot of time for a helicopter pilot. That's a little bit different because obviously they fly shorter distances and they don't have the fuel load to stay up for that long. So obviously they're in a different position than a transport category pilot who have much longer legs on their jets and can fly longer hours of flight time. So yes, that would be a different scenario. A helicopter pilot would be a totally different scenario. Okay. We would look at what they've done, what have they accomplished in the aviation. What do they do? Are they firefighters? Or are they rescue operators? Because there's a need for those in the country as well. But then again, those companies can also seek labor certification. Okay.
Dale, some of these questions we have answered, but if we can insist on the things that you've mentioned and remind the audience, that would be also great. I have a question from Fabiola. There is so many inconsistencies in USCIS. Same documents are accepted for some, not for others. Some with less experience are approved, stronger cases denied. What could be the reason for this, and how can this be avoided to get more consistency?
I think that has to come from the USCIS training their agents better, because the inconsistency exists, and it absolutely exists. I've had guys with master's degrees turned down, and I've had first officers, like I said, flying a 380 who approved. And the agent, it's the subjective intent of the agent, which is why we always offer to file again. Mm-hmm. So again, I wish that the USCIS would establish clearer guidelines on this. I really believe that this should come from the executive branch down, from the Department of Transportation, looking at the shortages and And obviously agencies don't speak to each other. I'm saying in my best world, what I would love to see is the Department of Transportation talking to the Immigration Homeland Security and saying, you know, this is what we need. Let's try to work this out. That's not going to
Exactly.
happen. That's not going to happen. But what we
Okay.
need is, I think, is more consistency in training, so it's not as subjective as it is.
Mhm, mhm. And then
I've,
in the
I've, I've
meantime,
had USCIS officers belittle my experts.
mhm.
The man has a 4-page resume, excuse me, and he calls him a what did he call him? A so-called expert with a pilot's license. Excuse
No,
me.
you see so many stories on USCIS, right? And we've seen in previous webinars that the fact that things are subjective, it's not only for pilots. It's very if it's the same for other fields as well. So I think this is more of a bigger conversation, right? But yeah, I mean, in the meantime, what can immigration lawyers do? Be sure to have all the document in place, manage the expectations of their clients, and refile when necessary when you feel that there is a subjective approach from the officer for sure.
We just
Um,
refiled on a gentleman, and we were desperate to get his case in because one of his children was turning 21. Excuse me, I don't know why my voice got dry from talking to you.
no, no, take your time, Dale.
I don't want to be Marco Rubio and drink water in a debate. I can't. Anyway, we were able to get him in successfully through the second time without changing much of the case. I mean, we changed some letters, we changed some stuff, but the agent put him through without an RFE. Again, that's very
Exactly.
subjective. So the client has to know before they file. There's not a good chance, but there is a chance of a denial.
Hmm. Exactly.
They just have to manage their expectations. And
Exactly.
don't sit there and watch the hiring in the United States. I have clients who go send me letters all the time. They're stopping hiring. They're hiring. They're doing this. They do that. I need to get in there. I can't rush USCIS. There's no speedy trial rule here in USCIS. They're going to answer when they answer.
Exactly. Thank you, Dale. I have a question from Corrine. What about pilots that are also safety managers? They work for a private charter company. Do you think it's worth trying the NIW? They meet the 10-year experience requirement and has a bachelor degrees in aviation.
I think that safety is one of the primary goals that we have here. If you listen to the chief pilot for American Airlines or their ALPA, their APA representative, he was talking about fatigue in the cockpit just last year in an interview. Of course, they were going through negotiations with the airline for their contract, but still, he made some great points. Because of the shortage, pilots are flying more hours, well within the legal limits, but more than they were flying previously. They were getting less time off. They were having quicker turns between trips instead of getting the required time off. They were going right to the legal limit, and it was causing fatigue on them. And that's a safety issue. We've had so many instances in the last year or two of fatigued air traffic controllers, fatigued pilots making mistakes. There was the famous Air Canada that switched to the wrong frequency and was being told to go around. There was the FedEx that almost hit a Southwest jet. That could have been controller error. There was a incident in Kennedy just a couple of months ago where Delta was taking off on runway 4 left. I think no, was it 4? They were on 4 left, and a pilot was supposed to turn right to taxi to 4 left, and he continued straight ahead to 3-1 left, which caused him to cross the path of the departing Delta jet. The controller had to scream to abort the takeoff. Again, was that fatigue? Was it miscommunication? Was whatever it was, it happened.
Mhm.
And the tail strike that just happened 2 days ago with United Airlines leaving Dulles in a 767-400 was a repeat of one that happened in February of this year with United Airlines. So safety is one of the keys to this industry. And I fully support my clients who have safety background to apply because I think we can show how they can come in through mentoring or consulting or starting a business of safety orientation
Mhm.
to do so. And also, let me just say this, speaking of that, some of the associations they join is very important.
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of RFEs where the USCIS officer said, "Is this a peer-approved organization?" In other words, did he have to or she have to go through vetting to be able to join that organization? And what does that organization do? The Flight Safety Foundation puts on seminars all over the country for safety. Um, I have a lot of my clients join the Royal Aeronautical Society out of London. Not only is it difficult to get into, you have to be sponsored to get into, but the Royal Aeronautical Society is at the forefront of a lot of innovation in the world of aviation. And I think that being a member of those shows you have a real desire to stay involved in aviation.
Thank you, Dale. I have more questions, but I'm going to share the CLE code now, and then we can stay for a few minutes to answer more.
Okay.
So the CLE code is 2404086 and the letter N as in Nancy. That's 2404086, the letter N as in Nancy. Okay. Um, I have a question from Raquel. What would you say are the most important things to show for a pilot's endeavor in creating a flight academy that links current pilots with potential new students?
Proper marketing, for one, through the business plan. Funds to start it, experience in business, or at least a partner that helps that has business background. All things lead to the credibility of the ability to do so. You know, you just don't want to put out a plan saying I'm going to do this and have no intention of doing it. If you're going to write something to the government, be in a position to follow through. It leads credibility to the organization.
Thank you, Dale. I have a question from Dawn. We've mentioned a few, but we can maybe mention them again or add a few. What is a good general endeavor for pilots?
That's a very interesting question. What is a good endeavor? Well, again, as we talked about, coming in and saying that I want to go fly for American Airlines is not going to cut it. Saying that you're going to come in and broadly enhance aviation is going to cut it. How you're going to do so, that's going to be your decision based upon you and your lawyers and everything else. But to be more specific on it, again, I've talked about if you have an experience in training, you have experience in teaching, and they're different. I'm not saying training and teaching are different. Um, some people are sim instructors, but some people are line instructors, and that's more fluid. Sim instructors more structured. A line instructor is more fluid because he doesn't know what's going to happen during that flight. He's just going to fly with you. So I think that those are teachers, and I believe that those should always be emphasized as an endeavor. Your proposed endeavor has to be, you have to be well positioned, and it has to be in the best interest of the United States. So you have to see, am I well positioned to follow this through?
Mhm. And here, in lines of a similar question, Beck Bull is asking how to prove that it would be beneficial to waive the requirements of a labor certification, third prong of DANASAR.
Again, I think that I've answered that question
Mhm.
in the sense that I don't believe that the major carriers will ever be able to get labor certification. Your 135 operators have been successful in doing so because the pilots will be hired at the let's just say the 135 operator. And if anyone who doesn't know what a 135 operator is, it's an on-demand charter company with seats under a certain amount and aircraft that weigh under a certain amount. They're called a 135 operator. They can be a scheduled 135 or a on-demand charter. They don't have the same requirements for the 1,500 hours that the 121 carriers do. But what I'm getting back to that is labor certification for those does exist. So I think that the basic thing is that you're not going to get labor certification at the majors. It's just not going to ever happen.
Thank you. We have a question from Wahid. Have you had experience in filing helicopter and drone pilot petitions more specifically? Our firm has had some varied success with filing helicopter aviation petitions. Has your firm taken a different strategy for different or more specific types of aviation?
My practice has been mostly limited to 135 and 121 carriers, heavy transport pilots. I have never done a drone case,
Okay.
but I would like his criteria. I'd like his information so that if I ever have a drone case, I could certainly pair up with him. So that if you could, that would be nice.
Yes, I will share that information with you, Dale. Let me see. Okay, so we have similar questions. That's why I'm going through a few. I have another from Vitali. Are you trying to send pilots petition to any particular immigration center? It seems that Texas lately started to just completely reject pilots.
That's based on regional, where your location is, your office is. You can't. You have to fly. If where I'm located, I have to file in Texas.
Okay. We have a question from Mehmood. Does a foreign transport military pilot with multi-engine, multi-crew aircraft experience, both as captain and instructor with 6,000 hours, be eligible for EB2 NIW?
If you don't have a college degree, you've had to have had 10 years of experience. You have to have a salary commensurate with your level of experience. You have to have a license. So 6,000 hours in and of itself is not the criteria. It's the other criteria. My personal cutoff is 8. But I love military pilots. I love military pilots. I think it shows a certain level of training and expertise. Guys who flew heavy transports to guys who flew the fighters. Those guys are trained so well, and they're so good at what they do. And I love to represent military pilots, and I emphasize their military training, and I emphasize their rank, and I emphasize their honorable discharge, and I try to get letters from commanding officers. And if they're from South America or even from the Middle East, I have them translated. And it helps because it shows that this person went through a very rigorous training program, was successful. He represented his country, and I just love him. I think it's great.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dale. I have a question. Have you ever appealed the decision of USCIS on a pilot case?
No, we always refile. We've
And
had
what
cases,
is your...
we've had cases where we thought we were going to because the decision was so bizarre.
Mhm.
But we just always refiled. We
Okay.
always take that
And
tack.
and have you had success with the refiles? I mean, is there a different approval rate to the regular filings?
No, no. Some lawyers have told me that I have a great success rate on the refile.
Hmm.
Um, Basically, when we refile cases, and again, it's been very successful for us to refile because we take the denial, we look at what this person said, we try to revamp it and address the issues, and refile it again.
Okay. Great. There's a question, I believe, from a potential applicant, Clara. Is a job offer from an airline or an aviation company required to file the NIW?
No, it's not. It helps though. If you can get a contingent job offer from an airline, that would be fantastic. In other words, certain companies will allow you to go through the process up to a certain point prior to the green card, not a final, and they will make a contingent job offer to you. Though that is so helpful. I had a client who had a contingent job offer from a 135 operator. That was helpful. So yes, contingent job offers are great. No company can give you a job offer per se unless you have a green card. So,
Exactly.
so the green card, they would always be contingent on you getting your green card to work in the country.
Okay. Thank you, Dale. Dale, a question about the business plan. How do you determine whether to use a professional plan or a business plan in your cases?
If a person doesn't have a high degree of education or does not show any bent on entrepreneurial when I vet them, or doesn't have any desire to run a business, then I will go with a personal plan. If a person has a training background, has management experience, then I will go with a business plan.
Okay. Thank you, Dale.
But
So,
I
uh,
always leave that up to the client and also to companies such as yourself, because I think you vet them and you also determine what is the best way to go as well, because it's always what's in the best interest of the client, not my interest or nor your interest, is what is going to assist this client the best.
thank you. Yes, and if there's any immigration lawyer here or an applicant that needs support for business plans, you can always reach out to us at sales@joorney.com, or also to your account manager if you already have one assigned, and we can definitely help you. Also, we provided Dale's information on the chat, so you can reach out to him, whether if you're an applicant or also an immigration lawyer looking for support. No, and I want to thank you, Dale, because I mean your knowledge is very vast on this topic, and I'm really glad we selected and chose you to be here on this webinar discussing about this topic. So thank you very much for being here, Dale.
Let me say one thing. I've used the word "we" a lot in this criteria. I say I've worked very closely on cases with an attorney in Miami that I have a lot of respect for, and also his name is Mark Ferneris, and Mark and I have worked very hard on a lot of cases. So I didn't want to leave him out. I had invited him to be on this show with me. Unfortunately, his schedule did not permit it, but I did not want to let this webinar pass away, leave, and not mention his name, because he's been extremely helpful over the years to me, and he's a very good lawyer as well. If any of you guys out there listening know him, make sure you tell him I mentioned his name.
That's great, Dale. And maybe we can have him on an update on a later date where we can talk more about this topic with him for sure.
Well, he does a lot more, a lot of other areas of law. He's a very good lawyer. I've
Mhm.
sent him cases out that I don't handle, and he's been very successful with them as well. So, again, you can contact me. I would love to talk about representing anybody out there who needs help. We will do everything we can to make sure that we give you the best advice possible. We will give you we will temper your expectations, but we will do everything we can to give you the best representation possible.
Thank
And
you very much, Dale.
thank you for inviting me on. I've really enjoyed this.
And thank you everybody for staying. We have more than 120 people who are still connected. So we really appreciate your attention, your interest, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye, Dale.
Bye bye.